Hey there, crypto family. So here's the thing. I've been talking to some of the absolute smartest chart analysts in the game. And you know what they all keep telling me? The same exact thing. If you can survive this moment right here, you're going to end up rich. The current situation. Look, I get it. If you can just make it through this latest dump we've been seeing, you're going to reach that place we've all been waiting for this entire season. And honestly, it's coming sooner than you might think. If history decides to repeat itself, which it usually does. Now, I'm going to keep showing you tons of reasons why this makes complete sense, especially when you look at the bigger macro picture. But hey, let me be totally transparent with you here. I don't have a crystal ball, right? I can't predict the future with 100% certainty. The probability play. But here's what I do know. When you look at all the data, all the patterns, all the historical context, it just makes the most sense to believe that yes, this rally is absolutely coming. I mean, come on. Of course it's coming. When you really break it down, it's pretty unquestionable. Now, could life throw us a curveball? Sure. Sometimes the improbable happens and catches everyone off guard. If that happens, we'll take a step back, analyze what we missed, and adjust accordingly. Could this be one of those rare moments? I mean, is it probable? Hell no. Absolutely not. What's most likely to happen? Here's what's most likely going down. After this current situation, we're going to see a recovery. Bitcoin is going to go into its final parabolic rally. You know, that crazy explosive move we've all been waiting for. And here's something super important. You're going to see the Russell 2000 take off with small cap stocks. Why does this matter? Because this has been a requirement for every single alt season in crypto history. Yeah, I know crypto's only got like a 16-year history, but still, throughout that entire history, this pattern has held true. It's coming, people. XRP's golden moment. And XRP? Oh man, XRP is going to be right there in the thick of it.
Actually, I believe XRP is going to be either the greatest beneficiary or one of the greatest beneficiaries of this type of environment. Why? Because it's been artificially held back for years. But guess what? XRP is finally unshackled. XRP has legal clarity now. We're literally living through the first moment in United States history. And remember, this is the largest capital market on the entire planet, where the war on crypto is officially over. The data doesn't lie. It couldn't be more obvious that this is the most probable outcome. And I'm not just some guy throwing around wishful thinking here. There are incredibly smart people at top-tier analytics firms using real data, not emotions, not hopes and dreams, actual hard data to reach these same conclusions. I'm going to show you some of this analysis in just a minute, plus give you perspectives from multiple analysts about what's specifically going to happen with XRP. Current numbers. Right now, as I'm recording this, XRP is sitting at $2.79, and Bitcoin is at $109,670. We're actually up a bit over the last 24 hours, though honestly, we've been seeing a lot of sideways action lately. That's pretty normal, but just the other day we had that notable dip that got everyone freaking out. The big question. So you might be wondering, was that dip it? Is that the worst we're going to see? Well, here's my take. Either the answer is yes, or we go down just a little bit more, and then the answer will be yes. Either way, we're probably pretty close to the bottom, especially if you believe what I'm about to show you. The bottoming signal. Check this out. Here's a post from Tropic, and these guys know what they're talking about. This account is run by the co-founders of Glassnode and Swissblock, both absolutely fantastic on-chain analytics firms. Just last night, they dropped this bombshell. As highlighted by Swissblock, we had a major reset and bottoming signal today. This same signal has identified the past 7 major bottoms. We are going higher. Be careful over the weekend, but short liquidity will get taken out next. Now that sounds like some serious conviction, right? But again, this isn't just someone's opinion. It's an opinion backed by real, solid data. The technical analysis. Here's the actual post from Swissblock that explains exactly why they believe this.
You can see it right there on your screen. They're calling this a global bottoms and capital rotation moment. See that yellow line up top? And then you've got what they're calling aggregated impulse at the bottom. Here's where it gets really interesting. The 7-signal track record. So Swissblock breaks this down beautifully. They're saying that during the reset phase, the last 7 times this signal triggered since 2024, it marked a major bottom. And what happened next? Get ready for this. Bitcoin rallied 20 to 30%. But here's the kicker. Altcoins absolutely surged. 50 to 150%. Where the real money is. Now, folks, I'm going to pause right here because this is crucial. The real opportunity for life-changing wealth in crypto, it's not in Bitcoin anymore. Not at this stage of the game. Look, I get it. Life-changing is subjective, right? And sure, if you hold Bitcoin for a really long time and it hits $1 million someday, that could still be incredible. But think about it. That's potentially a 10-fold increase, and it could take years to get there. But here's the $1 million question. How much easier is it going to be to get a 10-fold increase in pretty much any altcoin out there, including XRP? That's where the real opportunity lies. And this data totally backs up that point. The numbers don't lie. Going back to the beginning of 2024, yeah, Bitcoin rallied 20 to 30% from these bottom signals. But altcoins and XRP is right there with them, shot up 50 to 150%. And honestly, XRP did way better than just 150%. Remember, this thing had been artificially held down for years. Before the election, compared to its previous peak, XRP was up something like 600%, somewhere in that crazy neighborhood. Obviously, it's pulled back a bit because the whole market has. But listen carefully, we are not done. This thing is going to absolutely rampage higher. No question about it. No question about it.
The science behind the signal. Now here's where it gets technical, but stay with me because this is important. Swissblock says they track this with the most accurate tops and bottom signal in the market, something called aggregated impulse by altcoin vector. This thing measures exponential price structure across the top 350 crypto assets. So what's it telling us right now? Here's the key number. 22% of altcoins are showing negative impulse. And here's why that matters. Historically, market bottoms form in the 15 to 25% zone. We're right in that sweet spot. Once this reset completes, guess what happens? ETH and alts tend to lead the next rotation upward. As they put it, we're watching it unfold in real time. How cool is that? History rhymes again. So again, this is just one more piece of solid data that shows us. History really does rhyme with itself. You can see it right there on your screen, clear as day. Now, is this time going to be different? Well, you know what they say. This time is different are usually famous last words in investing. Almost never is it actually different in any meaningful way. Sometimes, sure, maybe, usually, absolutely not. Not even close. The 2017 fractal pattern. Check this out. Here's a post from chart analyst Alex Wazy. This guy shared this analysis with his 191,000 followers on X, and it's pretty mind-blowing. These are Bitcoin price charts, but remember, the whole crypto asset class moves together, which is exactly why this matters for you as an XRP holder. Look at the left side. That's 2017. You can see what happened there, right? Now he's comparing that to where we are right now, and he's overlaid a 2017 fractal pattern down here. If history is going to rhyme with itself, and it usually does, what do you think this means? Way higher prices for Bitcoin. And here's the beautiful part. The higher Bitcoin goes, the better it gets for XRP, the profit rotation strategy. Why? Because people will eventually take profits out of Bitcoin, and where do you think they're going to throw that money? Into coins that haven't had their massive rally yet at that particular moment in time. Now look, I totally get it. XRP has already rallied substantially since November, but here's what most people don't realize about XRP's historical pattern. It typically has 2 major legs up. It gets its first big move, which we clearly already had. Then it consolidates sideways for what could be over half a year, which it has been doing to this point. And then you get the next explosive leg up, the elongated cycle theory. Now, here's where things get really interesting. Some reputable chart analysts are making the case that we're actually in what they call an elongated cycle right now. This has to do with debt refinancing and the impacts from that on global M2 money supply. I've covered this in other videos, so I won't dive deep into it here. Look, I don't know if it's 100% true, only time will tell. But honestly, I find their arguments pretty compelling. So there is a possibility this whole thing could stretch out until mid-2026, or maybe even beyond in terms of when the market finally peaks. Am I convinced that's definitely going to happen? Not really taking a firm stance there, but I do think the arguments are solid. And you know what? If that is the case, we might be looking at more than just a 6-month waiting period for the next crazy leg up. But here's the key point. It's still coming. The higher Bitcoin climbs, the better it's going to be for XRP. That's what I'm getting at here. Enter Credible Crypto's bold prediction. And speaking of compelling analysis, let me show you something from one of the absolute best in the entire crypto industry, chart analyst Credible Crypto. This guy just shared this with his 477,000 followers on X. Now, I've got to tell you something about this analyst that's going to blow your mind. He is firm in his belief that XRP is going to peak this market cycle somewhere between $20 to $30. I know, that sounds absolutely wild. But if that happens, that's going to make a lot of people listening to this very, very happy and very, very wealthy. Here's the thing. This is exactly the type of move that does happen in crypto. I'm not personally predicting it will hit $30, but it's definitely not some fantasy land scenario either. The mind-blowing math. Think about what those numbers actually mean for a second. XRP bottomed out at 28 cents just a few years ago. Can you even imagine if it goes to $30? That's over a 100 times return. Again, I'm not making that prediction. He is. But here's what I want you to understand. That type of explosive growth is not crazy in the crypto world. It's absolutely plausible, and it happens more often than people think. The fear and greed deep dive. So anyway, check out what he's showing us here. You've got the Bitcoin Fear and Greed Index going all the way back to the later part of 2018. Here's what Credible had to say about this chart. He came across this Fear and Greed Index and thought it was super interesting to see it charted over the life of what he calls the current bull cycle that began in late 2018 when Bitcoin was at $3,000. The controversial cycle theory. Now, I need to pause here because this is important context. This is his particular thesis, and he's been pushing this idea since way back then. He believes that everything that's been happening since 2018 is actually all one massive market cycle. Look, I'm not saying he's right or wrong. I'm not getting into that debate in this video. That's just his stance. Most other chart analysts I follow will tell you we're dealing with traditional 4-year cycles, and honestly, I find those arguments pretty compelling too. But I wanted to mention this because the way he words things might confuse you if you're not aware of his perspective. Why 2021 disappointed people? Here's his controversial take. He recently said in a separate post that one of the reasons a lot of people were disappointed with the 2021 bull run is because that wasn't actually the end of the cycle. That wasn't the real blow off top. According to him, we're in this elongated cycle, and we're just now getting to the final stages. So what happened in 2021? That's going to look like nothing compared to what's about to happen. That's essentially what he's getting at here. Pretty bold claim, right? Anyway, then he dives into the technical stuff. He says you can clearly see the impulsive versus corrective subdivisions on this chart, breaking down the fear and greed patterns. And here's where it gets really fascinating. Notice how the two corrective waves, those are marked with red lines, have crazy similarities with extreme fear periods. We're talking about readings below 25 on the scale, and this fear persists through pretty much the entire corrective structure. But check this out. The impulsive waves, marked with blue lines, almost never hit those extreme fear levels below 25. Instead, you see periods of extreme greed. That's anything above 75 on the scale, like mixed with smaller periods of regular fear in the 25 to 50 range. These happen during the smaller corrections within those bigger impulsive moves. We're right at the sweet spot. Here's the kicker. We've just now hit the fear zone on this scale. And when you're in impulsive structures like we are right now, I'm talking big picture here. The fifth and final wave of this entire structure that started back in 2018. This level typically marks a bottom in the coming days or weeks. So folks, here's yet another analyst with a fantastic track record, basically saying, hey, this looks like we're at or very near bottom territory. Stop the panic. If you've been freaking out over the last couple of days, just stop. It absolutely does not make sense to be fearful here, even if the market does dip a bit lower, which I'll admit is possible, before we reverse to the upside, which I think is very probable. Here's what he says next, and this is crucial. As in our past impulsive moves, we can sit in the fear zone for some days or weeks, and even push into extreme fear for a bit. But typically, this level of fear and greed doesn't last long before the next leg of the impulsive move occurs. The final wave confidence, and then he drops this bomb. This further strengthens my resolve that the current correction is just a speed bump in the middle of our fifth and final wave of this cycle, and makes me even more confident that the most aggressive portion of this cycle is yet to come. His conclusion? Dips are for buying. Look at it. This is just one more way you can analyze the situation. This is what history is showing us. Again and again, history rhymes with itself. And get this, He posted this analysis just last night at 9:55 p.m. Central Time. This isn't some crazy out there stuff, folks. History rhymes with itself, and we are not done here. The Russell 2000 signal. Now check out this post from chart analyst Molly. He's talking about the Russell 2000. And as I mentioned earlier in this video, when small cap stocks start running, that means alt season is coming, my friends. Here's what he says. Russell with some volatility around all-time highs, which is kind of expected and normal. Once it enters price discovery with confidence, crypto will follow. Until then, patience. Do not mess it up. I mean, I just don't know how you couldn't believe that this is the most probable outcome. It seems so freaking obvious. XRP's consolidation pattern. Here's another great perspective from chart analyst Galaxy. He's looking at XRP/USD, and this is what he posted. XRP consolidating below previous all-time high, just like back in April 2017. We keep trying for the green line until we break out. Everything else is noise. He posted that this morning, September 27th. So what I keep seeing from all the analysts I follow is that nobody has lost their conviction that the most probable outcome is XRP finally going into that face melting phase. The face melting phase we haven't seen. And folks, we haven't seen this type of move in the better part of a decade. True face melting price action. That's what happened at the end of 2017, going into early 2018. Yes, I know we've hit a new all-time high recently, but in terms of just absolutely screaming through intense price discovery, we actually haven't seen that in 8 years. We also haven't seen a new all-time high for XRP priced against Bitcoin since the first half of 2017. But you know what? I think it's coming. Call me crazy, but I've got a little bit of a hunch here that it's absolutely freaking coming. The XRP/ETH chart signal. Here's one more piece of the puzzle from Crypto Wizard. He's showing an XRP/ETH chart, and his message is simple. It's brewing. Watch this chart. XRP versus Ethereum, the real story. And he breaks it down beautifully. XRP against Ethereum has started to push higher from the double bottom as expected. XRP is declining less than Ethereum, and in Q4 I expect it to outperform on the upside. Patience pays. You know what? That's totally in line with what I've been saying. Now, I'm not a chart guy. I'll be the first to admit that. But this is just common sense stuff. The market dynamics made simple. Look, I'm not getting into the timing specifics because that's not my thing. But conceptually, this makes perfect sense. Since April, Ethereum had been priced super low against the dollar because it had just been absolutely cratering. It had a lot of ground to make up. So of course, not surprisingly at all, XRP lost some ground against Ethereum as Ethereum gained ground against the dollar. This isn't rocket science here, and guess what? I actually predicted this going into it. Time has passed, and I was right. Duh. XRP's continued dominance. But here's what I'm saying now. At this point, XRP has obviously outperformed Ethereum this market cycle. And folks, it's not done. XRP is going to continue making Ethereum its tiny little baby back. Well, you get the idea. By the time this cycle is over, it's going to be even more embarrassing for all those Ethereum holders who irrationally hate XRP. Now, mind you, I've been holding Ethereum since 2017. I want it to do well. I'm just telling you, it couldn't be more obvious that XRP is going to just continue to destroy Ethereum in terms of performance. Like, by the time this cycle's over, it'll be abundantly clear that XRP was the better investment from this particular point in time. I'm willing to bet on that. Q4 predictions rolling in. And here we go, yet another analyst basically saying Q4 is going to be pretty damn good. Well, I don't doubt it for a second. Here's a post from chart analyst Zoom. XRP and XRP/BTC, both holding their respective supports. Large time frame structure is currently intact. I just wanted to highlight this briefly to show you yet another reputable analyst with a great track record saying, yeah, everything's fine. So even if we do go a bit lower, it doesn't make sense to freak out. The popular vote. Here's another perfect example. This is chart analyst altcoin Gordon, 813,000 followers on X. It's exceedingly rare to have a following of that magnitude, and I'm telling you, he's one of the most popular analysts in all of crypto. And what does he say? It doesn't take a genius to see what happens next for XRP, and then he just puts up arrows. For those of you not looking at the screen, that's all you need to know. Up arrows at this point. He's got a trend line pointing back to what happened earlier this year. It's just consolidation, people. This always happens. You get a narrower range of volatility and then you break to the upside. We're not done here. Locked and loaded. Here's a post from ChartNerd. XRP is locked and loaded. He posted that just yesterday evening. And by the way, he's still predicting that XRP is going to peak at $27. I mentioned that in a recent video, and I'm highlighting this to show you that these analysts who have been in this space for more than 5 freaking seconds, they're not sweating the dips in consolidation. It's like, yeah, it's normal. It doesn't mean XRP is broken. it's still going higher. Duh, more expert confirmation. And then there's this from chart analyst Ali Martinez. He says XRP has a price gap sitting between $2.73 and $2.51. The potential dip scenario. I wanted to mention this because there are quite a few analysts out there, and I actually highlighted this in yesterday's video, who've been talking about the possibility of XRP dropping down to certain levels. Now, depending on which analyst you're listening to, those levels vary. Could be $2.40, could be $2.50, maybe $2.60. One analyst even warned it could potentially drop closer to $2 if the entire market starts tanking. Obviously, if we're talking about that kind of fall, it would be led by Bitcoin. But here's the crucial point. None of the analysts warning about these potential dips believe it would break the structure for this market cycle. They're not saying we'd immediately go into a bear market or that we wouldn't see alt season. None of the analysts I follow think that. Track record matters. And you know what? The analysts I follow who chart XRP, they all predicted it was going to rally before it actually rallied this past November. And guess what? They were right. I honestly don't care what the analysts who missed this very obvious move have to say about XRP right now. Because frankly, if they missed it, I mean, some of them may have just genuinely not been paying attention. And that's fine. The XRP derangement syndrome. But I think a lot of them really do suffer from what I call XRP derangement syndrome. They're toxic Bitcoin maximalists. That's typically what you see here. That's why so many of them just kept predicting, oh, XRP is falling out of the top 10 coins by market cap. Oh, XRP is going to zero. Yeah, is that right? Now, how are you going to act? Because XRP is the #1 performing coin since November out of the top 100 coins by market cap. Take that, you doubters. It was so obvious. It is so obvious, and it couldn't have been more obvious. XRP was done being artificially suppressed. It's one of the most useful coins in all of crypto. It was such an easy call to see that once you have a level playing field, of course XRP was going to excel. Of course it was going to absolutely destroy the competition from that point forward in terms of return on investment compared to Bitcoin and Ethereum. Duh, not rocket science. Yet here we are, we were right. We're on the right side of history, the opportunity ahead. And folks, it ain't done. So yeah, if you can survive this current phase, the idea of getting rich, well, if you're sufficiently positioned and you don't make stupid emotional decisions, you know, FOMOing into stuff, panic selling, all that jazz, there's a very real opportunity here. If those of us, and I count myself among them, who believe we're going to have alt season, if we're right and that's coming, then those who survive this period and don't capitulate here have a real, very serious opportunity to achieve life-changing wealth and get very, very rich. The crypto wealth pattern. This happens in crypto all the time, and it has consistently for over 16 freaking years. Get yourself a piece of this because it's absolutely real. And yes, you can achieve this. That's one of the most empowering things about all of this. You know what? There's nothing special about me. I've built incredible wealth in terms of my overall net worth, even though I haven't cashed out to USD yet. My net worth is wildly higher than it would have been if I hadn't jumped into crypto. The simple truth, and there's nothing special about me. All I did was buy magic internet money and then do nothing for almost 8 years now. What I'm telling you is there's nothing preventing you from doing the same thing or something similar. You just gotta have the intestinal fortitude to weather the storms, all that negative volatility. But you literally can just decide, I would like to be rich. The choice is yours. So you can go invest in this asset class where there is this opportunity, where there is this wild volatility, and just see it through. You can just choose to do that. That's a thing you can do if you want to. And if we continue to be correct about the long-term viability of this crypto asset class, and XRP specifically, then you get yours. To me, it just couldn't be more obvious why crypto is here to stay. Think about this. There are business models that are possible now that wouldn't otherwise be possible. Just think about that for a second. And that's aside from all the great narratives, which I totally buy into, by the way. But just the value of being able to hold an asset that can't magically be confiscated by a third party, you know, self-custody. There's so many attributes of cryptocurrencies that are incredibly desirable. That alone is enough to keep this asset class around forever. There are tons of reasons, and that's without even getting into streaming money, like how you can stream Netflix but for payments. That's without getting into what you can do with smart contracts and everything else. There are so many possibilities. It's obvious that this technology is here to stay, and you can just choose to have your piece of it if you want to. The power is in your hands. Isn't that empowering though? Because you can choose to do that. You control that decision. I find that incredibly empowering. Regular people like you and me, we can just do that thing. I think it's absolutely cool. The numbers don't lie, and it's very obvious. The number go up, my friends. I mean, I was here when the entire crypto asset class was worth $150 billion. Look at this chart. It was $150 billion, maybe even less than that. I can't remember the exact bottom that we hit at some point in 2018. But now we're at 3.68 trillion with a T. And you know what? This is going to be at 10 trillion at some point in the future, then tens of trillions. And one day, probably not that far in the future, even if it takes over a decade, and I don't know if it will take that long, it's going to be worth over $100 trillion. You can just choose to have your piece of that. You decide if you want to do that or not. Managing expectations and reality. Yeah, maybe it takes longer than you'd want, but maybe it doesn't either. It depends on what you're investing in, how much money you're putting in. Those are a couple of the biggest factors, obviously. But just seeing this through, you absolutely can do it. I know it's hard to believe if you haven't achieved anything like this in terms of investing. It seems like oh, that can't happen for me, though. Stop it. That's a defeatist attitude, and it's not true. And mind you, I have nothing to sell you here. I'm just telling you what I know to be true. You can do this. The smart strategy. Now it's up to you to do it right. I think just having broad exposure, mostly to large caps and mid caps, not just investing heavily in only one coin, is the way to go. Even though XRP is my favorite, I'm biased. Yes, I admit that. I have very broad exposure to the crypto asset class. If you just do that and have a sufficient time horizon in mind, yeah, you can just make it happen. Yes, you can. Do not have a defeatist attitude. The wild reality check. And we haven't even had the blow off top yet. And I'm still holding all this stuff. It's absolutely wild, but it's real. And there are solid reasons why this makes complete sense. The money flow secret. Here's the thing, there's just so little money in the crypto asset class right now, and so little money in XRP specifically, that it doesn't take much money flowing in to create a crazy multiplier effect. It's basic math. But you know what? Fast forward a decade or two, and yeah, XRP will still be here. It'll still be fundamentally sound if things keep going the way they are, which I totally expect them to. The window of opportunity. But here's the catch. You're not going to get life-changing wealth from XRP a couple of decades from now. Why? Because that'll be the point where everybody already knows about it. It'll be accepted as a winner by everyone on the planet who's investing. Right now, even though it's obvious to anyone paying attention that XRP is a winner, it's still the underdog. Have you noticed that? It's number 3 by market cap, but most people don't know what we know in this community. The knowledge gap advantage. Most people who are paying attention to what's happening, they don't know about the developments. They don't know about all the real-world utility. They haven't connected the dots yet. So to me, it's like, yeah, XRP is obviously a winner, but the rest of the world hasn't figured it out yet. And that's why we have this incredible opportunity right now. It's just the coolest damn thing on the planet, honestly. Thanks for watching. If this analysis helped you see the bigger picture, smash that like button and let me know in the comments what you think about these predictions. Are you positioned for what's coming? I'll see you in the next one.